So good evening again. I'm Jenny Morrison, and along with my education co-chair, Osa Osagi, I'm glad you can make it. I extend a special warm welcome to the guests that we have here with us tonight. We're going to be on if you could just scroll through your gallery for a minute or two, you'll be able to see each other's faces while we're still virtual. It's just nice to see who's here tonight. We understand you may opt to turn off your video during the program, especially if you've been on screen all day, but isn't it nice to see each other, if just for a few moments? We offer dialogues multiple times a year to educate members about the work our grantees do and about the larger issues that make the work necessary. Our large turnout tonight indicates the desire of members to gather and learn together. And the Education Committee has recently adopted what we're calling the ladder of involvement, a see one, do one, lead one approach to delivering events to you. So this evening, new member Jen Lawrence has been shadowing me, co-planning, she's been learning the ropes. And at the end of the program tonight, I'll ask if any of you on the call might want to be involved in the planning and execution of our next dialogue in April. When we bring two different organizations together who have differing missions, we look for common ground. Employment security is central to the work of BEST. And though it's not central to the work at Fathers Uplift, I'd call it essential for the fathers they serve. We have a terrific group of speakers. I'm going to get right to them. Let me tell you how the evening will unfold. I will introduce the speakers as they appear. And at the end of the evening, we will share ways that you can support these organizations. We also will have a time for questions from you. You can drop questions into the chat as they occur to you throughout the evening. Tonight, we're really fortunate to have a fellow TPC member, Dr. Tariana Little, with us to speak from her public health lens, as well as leaders from Best Hospitality and Fathers Uplift. Both of those nonprofits are current grantees, but they have also both been previous TPC grantees as well. First, Tariana. Dr. Tariana Little is a Boston native. She was a young professional fellow at TPC in 2019 and has been active, serving on a grant team, helping with the YP initiative. Tariana currently teaches at the Harvard School of Public Health, where she also got her doctorate. She's the CEO and co-founder of Envision Productions, a media boutique, that works with organizations to help them convey how they are changing the world. When we spoke with Tariana about setting the stage for the topic tonight, she said, I don't lecture, I don't talk data, I'm a storyteller. I tell stories that are centered in science, I tell stories about social change, and we said, perfect. So I'm now going to turn the screen over to Tariana to provide us with some background information on employment stability.
Thank you, Jenny. It's a pleasure to be here. I will start sharing my screen. Can you all see? Perfect. Welcome, everyone. I'm excited to kick off this event called Beyond Employment, the Challenges to Economic Stability. And so I want us to think about what is economic stability. One definition that I'm inspired by Healthy People 2030, which is a federal initiative. It's a modification of their definition. And so mine is steady incomes that meet our life needs. And of course, it's not just about income. We're also talking assets. We're also talking savings. But just for the sake of this conversation, to simplify it, having enough money, earning steady money to meet our life needs. And so my background is public health, and it's often a misconstrued field where we think about public health and we're thinking about medicine, we're thinking about healthcare, ambulances, vaccinations, and with the pandemic, public health has been on the lens, but a lot of it to healthcare. But that's only a subset of what public health is. And so I'm coming to this topic through a public health lens, particularly a social determinants of health perspective, which says there's so many social variables that are affecting our life, both in positive ways and in negative ways. And today's conversation around economic stability and thinking beyond employment is challenging us to think beyond careers and job availability, which is at the top there above social, beyond income, which is on the right side. And those economic factors, let's consider a broader perspective, a more complex perspective. And so I am drawn to the social determinants of health view because it allows us to map out and to understand the interrelated factors. And I also want to underscore that in public health, we have a foundation of social justice values. And I like this picture because it goes beyond what we typically see. We know that the reality is that we live in a society with a lot of oppression, historically and current. So this is the reality here, where we have different groups of people that are stacked in terms of opportunity or lack thereof, and hindered in their ability to participate fully and meaningfully in society. When we think about equality, we're thinking about everyone having the same type of background or positioning, which is not exactly what we want, because we know that people come with different needs and have different desires and experiences. When it comes to equity, now we're talking about supporting people based on their needs so that they can participate fully and meaningfully in society. But let's take it a step further and think about liberation and taking away that fence, that those structural barriers that are keeping us all from participating in our worlds, for which we wouldn't need to have extra supports or equitable supports. So I like this because it challenges us to think beyond equality, beyond equity, to what is liberation. And I think that our nonprofits today here are all working towards some form of liberation for their communities and for their clients. So in terms of challenges to economic stability, now that we saw the social determinants of health framework, some of the challenges are, let's name it, racism, challenges due to race and ethnicity, nowadays challenges due to lack of appropriate internet connection, not being able to afford internet to be able to engage in the hybrid and increasingly remote and virtual world that we are living in. Could be sexism, could be family structure, maybe single motherhood or single parenthood, could be documentation status, educational inequities, differences in terms of how much money you're making, how much money you're able to save, how much debt you have. Let's think about educational debt. Housing insecurity, whether you have a home, whether you are renting, whether you can still afford to maintain your home. Food insecurity, or even living in a food desert. Lack of availability to feed yourself, to feed your family, or to afford the food needed to feed your family. And then health, your health status. And this is bi-directional, such that when you think about people's experiences, and let's say a single mother who happens to be Latina and has educational debt and is living, in a food desert, and as a consequence of so many factors has diabetes, not only is that going to affect her job security and economic stability pathways, but also whether or not she's making enough money due to all these factors is going to shape how harmful those other factors will be for her. So it's bi-directional. So some of these factors could be risk factors for her to be able to advance in society, but also by virtue of not being able to advance in society, that hindrance is going to make it more salient for her lived experience as a Latina or as a single mom or as someone with educational debt. It's going to be that much more harmful to her. So when we think about equity, when we think about liberation, let's think about the structural factors that are keeping people from being free. This is a high level example, but I also want to point it to a local situation here when in 2015, the Color of Wealth report came out, which was by the Federal Reserve Bank of Boston and other institutions. And it really highlighted stark, shocking for some, shocking not for some, not shocking for others, that the median net worth of Black Bostonians was $8. And here is a figure showing that for white families, it was almost $250,000. This was 2015. And then it was reported 2017. And now let's think about 2022 with the pandemic and how it has ravaged our communities. And I bet you that these numbers are worse. They were worse to begin with for communities of color, and they're getting worse. So this is the context in which we're living in. And so I hope that by having a public health perspective and understanding social determinants of health, we can understand that it's beyond money, beyond jobs, and all the different ways in which we may be harmed or helped. And so now let's hear from some real world examples of organizations in the field whose constituents and clients are experiencing these realities.
Thank you, Tariana. If you are, my mind's kind of working right now. And if you have questions, drop them in the chat. We will circle back to Tariana later in the program. And as she said, we're now going to move into some people who are doing the real work. And I'm first going to introduce to you Lori Sylvia. Lori is the apprenticeship director at Best Hospitality. She began her career in human resources, then spent 15 years at home raising a family. When she relaunched her career, she was doing some staff training at the Park Plaza Hotel, and she heard managers talk about a nonprofit where they did volunteer work, training people for jobs in the hospitality field. That led her to Best, where she was hired, and now she manages the external partnerships and oversees all aspects of apprenticeships. So Lori, I'm going to ask you kind of a two-part question and then let you go, okay? So if you could tell us what it's like for your client seeking employment right now at this moment, and then how Best is supporting them.
Sure, I'd be happy to. Thanks, Jenny, and thanks so much for having me tonight. At Best, we've seen significant changes in who our job seeker clients are now and what barriers they face. Many of you know Best, and many of you know us very well since you volunteered with us, and I thank you for that. For those of you who don't know Best, I want to just take a minute and tell you a little bit more about us first. Our mission is to provide individuals with the education, skills, and training to excel in the hospitality industry and in their personal lives. We do this in two ways. First, we provide classes to members of Local 26, which is the Hotel Workers Union. These are classes like English, computers, citizenship classes, and industry skills certifications like our on-call banquet server class and CPR. And then we also have a grant-funded job seeker program. It's a training program which moves people into quality housekeeping jobs. So Margarita was a job seeker student, and I want to share her story because she's typical of the type of client we had prior to the pandemic. When I met Margarita, she was working as a night manager at a fast food restaurant in Boston. She's a single mom who moved to Boston from Cape Verde with her mother and her two young daughters. She got that job, and she had recently been promoted. She was working the 2 to midnight shift, and she often didn't get home until 1 a.m. Back then she was earning about $12 an hour with no benefits, no paid sick time, and no vacation time. She was working very hard and needed that job to support her family, but she wasn't home to help her daughters with their homework, to feed them dinner, or to tuck them into bed at night. In her home country, she had owned her own restaurant. She applied to our training program, and when I interviewed her, she broke down crying. She said, "I came here for a better life for my daughters, and this is not a better life." We accepted Margarita into our training program prior to the pandemic, and after graduating, she got a job as a housekeeper at one of our partner hotels. Today, I'm so happy to tell you that she earns over $25 an hour. And thankfully, she's back to work at her hotel after being furloughed during the pandemic when her hotel closed. Her daughters are thriving, and her oldest just graduated from high school and is considering continuing on to college. So things at Best were really going very well prior to the pandemic. The hospitality industry, which was our focus, was thriving. and our job seeker training program was placing our clients into good jobs and moving them out of poverty. At our peak, we served about 85 job seekers with a placement rate of about 80%. And Best's overall budget at the time was over $1.5 million. When the pandemic hit in March of 2020, as you know, most hotels closed. The hospitality industry came to a halt. We did a quick pivot from training for hotel housekeeping jobs to training for hospital housekeeping jobs, or what the hospitals call environmental services workers. Hospitals were and still are hiring. We developed new employer partnerships at the time, and we built a curriculum with their support and input. And the hospitals were eager to hire our graduates, and they still are today. I mentioned earlier, Jenny asked how our clients have changed since the pandemic. We're having to do a lot more outreach and recruitment for a smaller and less qualified applicant pool. Most of those people who apply to our job seeker training programs now are not like Margarita. So let me tell you about a student I'm currently working with. Salamata comes from West Africa. She comes from Guinea, where she only has 3 years of education. She came to the United States in 2015 with her husband and 2 children. Unfortunately, her home life is not a happy one. Her spoken English is quite good, but she has very minimal reading and computer skills. She could never apply for a job on her own. She braids hair at a local salon, but it isn't steady or well-paid work. In class, she received a Chromebook through our partnership with Tech Goes Home. And on the first day, we helped her set up her first email address. We were in person on that first day, but the rest of the class was virtual. On the second day of class, her son was home from school on a snow day, and he helped her get on to the internet and join class on Zoom. But the next day, when he was back in school, she couldn't log in. With lots of hand-holding and coaching, she graduated from our program, and I'm happy to tell you that this morning she had a virtual interview with the hospital. She was confident and she's ready to get that job. As Jenny told you, before coming to work at Best, I worked in human resources at 2 of Boston's partner hotels. Jenny mentioned the Boston Park Plaza Hotel. I also worked for the Ritz-Carlton Hotel for many years. And in all my years in workforce development, I have never seen the labor market as it is today. Many wonder where the workers are and why businesses can't find workers to fill their open jobs. At Best, we meet clients daily who want to work, but those coming to us have so many challenges that get in the way of them applying for jobs, getting jobs, and keeping jobs. Low English language skills keep them from being able to pass a telephone interview. Low literacy or low computer skills keep them from navigating complicated online application systems or doing virtual interviews. These are just some of their barriers. We work with clients to support them with these barriers. Tonight, I'm thinking of Cynthia, who couldn't pay her cell phone bill and therefore couldn't receive calls from interested employers. Or Anaya, who lost her cell phone and doesn't have any money to get another one. Or Maria, who gave up trying to get a hospital job on her own because one of the hospitals asked her for 5 references and she couldn't think of 5 people. Or Shanika, who had to show up for a court date in the middle of our training. Or Gene, who had to take his mother to the doctor twice during our training because he's the only one in his family who speaks English well enough to communicate with her doctor. Or Carmen, whose entire family got COVID during our training. Or Tanisha, who lost 3 family members in the last 2 weeks due to COVID. The students we have today are going from no job or barely a job into our program. They need childcare. They're taking care of elderly family members. They talk about inflation and how much groceries cost today. If you volunteered to do a practice job interview with one of our students recently and they didn't show up, it's because their daycare center just closed because one of the kids tested positive, or their mother-in-law's surgery was delayed and now she has no daycare, or her husband had to work a double shift because the restaurant where he works is understaffed, or the 20-year-old doesn't understand that she needs to tell someone when she can't make an appointment. These are the issues we face today, and which were not as prominent before the pandemic. The same barriers were often there, they've just magnified now, and COVID is in the mix. Jenny mentioned good jobs, better lives, and that's Best's tagline. Our goal is to place our clients into good jobs that lead to better lives. Good jobs mean different things to different people. To many, a good job offers a life-sustaining wage. To others, a good job must have health insurance or tuition assistance or career advancement. And to some, a good job is simply one where they have a regular schedule with the same days off each week, and they can count on getting their 40 hours of work and the same paycheck each week. At Best, we strive to work with employers that offer all of these things. Our clients are trusting in us to guide them to good jobs that will lead to better lives. Thank you.
Thank you, Lori. If that doesn't paint the picture. I'm going to, without interruption, I'm going to move right on to Father's Uplift. Welcome two guests from there. Dr. Charles Daniels, he may be a familiar face in the audience. As the co-founder and CEO of Father's Uplift, Charles has combined his education in clinical social work, where he holds a doctorate, and theology, where he holds a master's, with his personal experience to create an organization focused on helping fathers overcome challenges, become a positive presence in their children's lives. He spoke with us last year about why fathers might be present. And tonight we're going to hear more about how Father's Uplift supports families. He's joined by Father's Uplift Ambassador, Greg Carter. I'm going to let Charles speak first and then introduce Greg. Welcome to you both. So Charles, I'll just let you speak about Father's Uplift and its links to employment, and then maybe how the coaching program has evolved.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Jenny, and the Philanthropy Connection for the invitation to share our journey with you and introduce Ambassador Mr. Gregory Carter, one of our best, who we are so proud of. But to start, just a brief explanation of what we're doing at Father's Uplift and how it connects to employment. One of the main barriers that we find that are interfering with our fathers' ability to feel good about themselves as men, as well as be present, is financial employment, right? When we think about many of our men who may have histories of incarceration with a record or trauma, right? It's hard to overcome those issues without quality relationships and connections. We understand that when you are initially in philanthropy and you're starting organizations, oftentimes it's the relationships that get you through the door. We find that to be the case with many of our fathers with histories of incarceration, having those adequate relationships in the community, making sure that we're following up with them and doing our due diligence, as well as having vetted those organizations that we send our precious fathers to, is integral to our approach with coaching and keeping our fathers connected to resources and employment. As such, we do not send our fathers to any community organization or place where they can get a job without having a relationship with their organization. Because if our partners understand the history of racism, as well as how men are impacted by the record, having a criminal record, or past histories of incarceration, or how ridiculous child support payments that they're unable to pay because they can't take care of themselves, how that interferes with their emotional well-being and where they want to be in their lives, as well as the type of father they want to be in their children's lives, they can't really help us. So for us, it's really important for them to have a foundational understanding of who the men are that we're sending to them, as well as understanding that we all deserve a second chance despite our past mistakes. And keeping those things in mind through our coaching department, who play a very important role in keeping our fathers connected to those resources, making sure that we have adequate partnerships with them. Even our relationships person, we have a designated person on our team whose main job is to stay connected to those organizations and make sure that they stay updated with what we're doing, as well as we stay updated with what they're doing. But I can't forget the other group of people that play a very important part in us being able to connect with our fathers in the community. And those are our ambassadors who you will hear from today, like Mr. Gregory Carter, who work hard and they do their best to make sure that fathers in the community have an ongoing support person and system in place for them to call whenever they are in need. It's another level of our community intervention, and we're so happy to have Mr. Carter here to share a little bit more about that. And we're open to any questions that you may have about our work. So I'll give it back to you, Jenny.
Thank you, Charles. Greg, you asked, there's Greg.
Sure. Hi, absolutely. Hi, everybody. Thank you for having me. Like I said, my name is Greg, and I am a person who is in long-term recovery. I can't speak highly enough about Father's Uplift program. I mean, when I was a person who was incarcerated, and through the grace of whoever, I found Father's Uplift, and that is probably the best thing that has happened to me thus far. I mean, I had a rough time adjusting to society when I first came home, and through that program, I've been able to find a therapist. I mean, they've helped me in so many ways. It's unbelievable. I mean, I found a therapist there. I've been able to do a lot of research with their help, finding work through some of the connections that they have. I mean, I just had a rough period when I first came home, and they've helped me tremendously. I mean, with clothes, with cosmetics, with bus passes, with, I mean, just things that a person needs to really function in society when you come home and you literally have nothing to come home to. And that organization has, I mean, I can't speak highly enough about Father's Uplift. I mean, that is a program that is much needed in the community. The support that they give is unbelievable. I don't know. I mean, I became an ambassador over there, and the things that they've given to me, I try to pass on to other fathers because I'm a father myself, and I don't know how much to say about that program, but the
I'm
support,
curious.
I can just go ahead.
I'm curious, Greg, about how the support groups work there.
Well, the support groups, they have, like I said, they have therapists there. They have leaders, like we have several ambassadors, and I have to speak about Leonard, who is sort of like the supervisor of all the ambassadors and stuff. And he, I mean, he's a person that just stays connected with you. He constantly calls you to make sure that everything's going right in your life and that you're doing the right thing and that you're being supported in every way. I mean, if you have a dream, they're going to try to make that dream come to fusion for you. They're going to do the best that they can to help you out. And it's just like I said, man, when you first, like I was incarcerated. I've been home since 2017, and that's when I found Father's Uplift. And they've been involved in my life ever since then, up until this point. Just recently, they have given me a hotspot so that I can have better computer connection. And I mean, it's just nonstop. It's just things that you need. They're gonna do their best to help you get the things you need to become a productive member of society. As far as work was concerned, I remember they've given me like, I forget the name of what they call that, a temp agency where they hooked me up with a temp agency, and I've been able to work for them up until this point, where it's just employment is, I mean, that's part of economic stability. I mean, employment, I've been able to maintain a job through the help of Father's Uplift. And I don't think I would have made it without them, to be honest. And they're just, it's a tremendous organization. And I'm just glad to be a part of it. You know, and I do everything I can to pass that on to other people that are in need of help. And I will continue to do that till, you know, till I can't do it anymore, because I am truly grateful to them, and I always will be.
Thank you. Thank you. And we wish you best in, you know, in your continued stability and,
Right, thank you.
and continued job searches. And Charles, do you want to say anything more before we kind of move on from Father's Uplift about, you know, I'm wondering about kind of what are the, what are current challenges we can, you know, kind of Lori moved us to some very current stories. And if you want to add to Greg's story.
Yes, you know, current challenges right now is lack of community, as well as this notion around mental health, and particularly in the African American and Black community, we witnessed 2 severe suicides that have taken the communities by surprise, that happened to famous individuals as well as individuals that are known by many Black and Brown communities throughout the country. So experiencing vicarious trauma and seeing and hearing about these suicide acts, and making sure that our constituents are okay while they are dealing with some of these stressors that we talk about: lack of housing, lack of employment, their own trauma, trying to be the best parents they can be to their children, and trying to be the best parents they can be to themselves in the midst of having to explain these suicides to their children and talk about what these things are and how it impacts our community. That's one of the main challenges. And I remember when I was a kid, my mother used to tell me about, and I share this because this is very important for us, because this ties into a next challenge that I believe that we will continue to address and continue to be a beacon of hope in the lives of those that we serve. And that challenges community. I remember talking to my mom when I was a kid. She used to tell me how when she was being raised, she was born in the 50s, and she would say, you know, baby, my neighbors in my neighborhood, they knew my name, and you know, they knew what was going on in my life, and they would tell my mother on me if something happened. It was just this huge neighborhood of people that knew your first and last name. They knew your family, they knew your mother, they knew your father, they knew your grandfather, that generally cared about you and your well-being. And she said, honey, it takes a village. What we realize is many people that we work with don't have that village, and we have to become that village to them. Now, in this particular point in time in our history and in the United States of America, our constituents, as well as individuals throughout this entire country, need a village. And being a part of that village and knowing who your village is, and feeling connected to that village is by far one of the most difficult challenges that we see in our agency and our community thus far. So for us, stand on top of that and making sure that people know that they have a community, making sure that those that we are privileged to serve know, hey, if you're feeling as if you are experiencing a challenge, don't be afraid to reach out, right? If you're feeling depressed and down and out by what you're hearing and the vicarious trauma that you're experiencing, you have a neighbor next door that you can call and be in touch with. So for us, by far, mental health and having these difficult conversations and not only preparing you to deal with your own issues and make sure that you are the best parents you can be to your child, being a parent to yourself and tapping into your community are challenges that we're helping those that we serve navigate. So I'm not sure if I answered the question correctly, but that's what we're viewing. That's how we're trying to stop on it. Just be a consistent source of community like my mother had, like I had, because many people need that and they don't have the privilege to have that. And that's where we come into play.
Thank you. Yeah, there was no correct there. There wasn't a correct answer there, Charles. You know, I'd love, Tariana, I'd love to get you back on. I'm wondering what you're thinking as you're hearing these stories, and people can be formulating questions they'd like to ask, and continue to pose those. But maybe we could hear from Tariana and then go to Q&A from the audience.
Thank you, Jenny. Thank you, Lori. Thank you, Gregory, and thank you, Charles. In my company, Envision Productions, we have a framework called social impact storytelling that is based on 3 pillars. The first one being real people, real stories. The second is centering those most affected. And the third is conveying impact. And I think that the stories that we heard today from Lori, Greg, and Charles exemplify all of that. And in addition, I heard 4 themes. One is that, the pandemic has worsened some of the challenges that our community's most vulnerable families are experiencing. And individuals are engaging with systems that can either limit them or can uplift them. And there's a real importance of community and building that village, in particular, having responsive programs and responsive partnerships that understand and that are designing supports to address the traumatic and the difficult life conditions that our society's most oppressed are experiencing, such as mental health challenges, incarceration, family healthcare needs, and other examples that have been touched on so vividly tonight. And lastly, this is, my interpretation here is that we can learn tremendously from including and centering those that are excluded from power and from opportunity. Because when we design for those that have challenges, we're designing for everyone. And I take inspiration from the disability movement, and one of their key quotes is "nothing about us without us." And I think that BEST and Fathers Uplift exemplify that.
Thank you, Tariana. Jen, I'm going to I hope people will take a moment if they do have a question to think of it now. And we have too big a group to do the raise hand thing. So Jen is going to field questions from the chat.
So we've had a few questions come up. Laurie, we had some folks who were curious how your clients find you. And I think, Charles, that's a good question for you as well. And Laurie, tied to that, someone was curious whether all of your clients are immigrants.
Mm-hmm. Great questions. So how do our clients find us? We get lots of referrals from community organizations. We get family and friends of graduates of our programs, referrals from the union, from Local 26, Unite Here Local 26, the Hotel Workers Union. And I'll tell you, I spread flyers everywhere through every listserv I can possibly get my hands on to get the word out about our classes. And no, all of our clients are not immigrants. We work with many US-born individuals from lots of communities around Boston and in Boston. So we're open to everyone. A lot of our funding right now is for Boston residents from the city of Boston.
Great, thank you. Charles, can you tell us how clients find you? And Gregory, maybe you can share also again, how you specifically found Fathers Uplift.
Awesome. Yes. So, Lori, thank you. I mean, you're an inspiration. I would love to partner and speak to you after this call. But clients find us in various ways. Our greatest referral source are fathers who have served and want to give back to their communities. Case in point, one of our ambassadors, Benjamin Diaz, was featured on Fox 25 talking about Fathers Uplift and how much it impacted him. So imagine, he was so empowered to share how we helped him reconnect to his kid and be the person that he's always dreamed of being. So that's our number one resources, like fathers like Ben, right? Also, we get nowadays, we get referrals from schools, from prisons, jails that we work with, various community organizations and hospitals within the community, which I think also contributes to the fact that we have a 6 months waiting list. You know, we cut down our waiting list and now it's growing between 6 and 9 months, right? So we're always trying to meet that need. But for the most part, men like Greg and Ben are spreading the word and making sure that us as a resource is given to other men that are experiencing similar situations as they.
I found Father's Uplift by luckily by chance. I was looking for a therapist, and I came across that organization, and I made a call and I reached out to them. They called me back, and they informed me of some of the things that they do, and here I am. But like I said, it's probably one of the best things I have ever done. So yeah, that's how I found Father's Uplift.
Oh, that's terrific. Thanks for sharing that. I'm going to go back to Lori. I'm going to go back to you. Question came up around what's considered a living wage in this area, and do all of your placements offer a living wage? And tied to that, someone asked about the wages, comparing the wages between hotel housekeepers and hospital housekeeping jobs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, great question. So yes, we are very careful to partner with employers that offer a family sustaining wage, living wage with benefits. Our goal is to place our graduates in full-time jobs with comprehensive benefits. As far as hotels and hospitals, currently the hotels are paying more than hospitals for housekeepers. And I think some of that comes with the involvement of collective bargaining agreements. The hotels that we partner with, the housekeeping staff are all members of Unite Here Local 26, and their wages are great. These jobs in hotels and in hospitals, these housekeeping jobs are very, very demanding, very physically demanding. And so much more goes into these jobs than just the cleaning aspect of it. In the luxury hotels that we partner with, housekeepers are encouraged to interact with guests, to recommend restaurants and activities to do in the Boston area. You know, it's no longer a time when housekeepers scurry around silently in the background. It's very different now. And that's why our training is so important, to bring out those qualities in individuals and get them ready to join these companies. So believe it or not, operationally, hospitals and hotels, they operate somewhat, they have many similarities. And that's why we really look to pivot to hospitals when COVID hit. I am working very hard to advocate for workers in the healthcare industry to raise the wages. And I have been very vocal around comparing the wages that hotels are offering and letting the hospitals know about those wages. So, and some of the hospitals have been responsive. Mass General Brigham just raised their minimum hiring rate, and they raised their shift differential. So the way hospitals work is you're hired at a rate, currently most are around $15.50, and then they offer differentials for different shifts. So if you work weekend hours, you get paid more. If you work second shift, you get paid more. If you work the overnight shift, you get paid even more per hour. And, you know, as I said, I've been very vocal around a project that we recently did with a hotel where they hired all of our graduates at $26 an hour for the housekeepers with full benefits. So I think you can only tell what's really happening out there and let them all know. So I hope that answers the question.
Absolutely, that's great. Thank you. Here's a great question for both of you. So it says, a practical question. Charles raised the need for community, and these days community really resides online. Lori mentioned the difficulties her clients have accessing the internet and using technology. So the question is, do panelists have practical suggestions for improving internet access and providing resources to these target populations?
Yeah, so I would say more support with providing adequate Wi-Fi. I would say is a practical solution. Hotspots, tools that allow individuals to have access to quality healthcare. I know the city has started an initiative to support with that, but I think there's the need and demand for adequate Wi-Fi is higher than the resources that's currently provided to support with that. I think that's a simple solution, but also one that more funders and supporters could support with volunteering to provide hotspots and resources for people to have Wi-Fi. So there's one practical solution that I think could be easily provided, but also accessible.
I definitely agree with Charles. The access to internet, it's just absolutely a necessity. And we've seen that happen through the pandemic. It's been magnified. Also just low cost computers, Best was fortunate that we were already partnering with a Boston-based organization called Tech Goes Home prior to the pandemic. And thank goodness we were. We apply for every one of our classes to be approved as a Tech Goes Home class. And with that, each of our students get a Chromebook computer, whether they're delivered to their home or we hand them to them in person on the first day of class. They also, Tech Goes Home also provides assistance with low-cost internet or a hotspot if the individual needs it. They'll help them get on to Internet Essentials, which is a low-cost option, or some other low-cost options too. And then, they'll pass out hotspots to anyone who needs them. So it's really key. So more organizations like that, because Tech Goes Home cannot approve every single class. Some of ours don't get approved, and we have to loan out computers to our students and then get them back, which is heartbreaking when we have to take them back.
Great. Another question, Charles, for you. It says our society is an aching tooth society. We do little or nothing until something is really hurting. How do you do outreach to fathers to help them be better before they find themselves in situations that are so painful and difficult and troublesome? Is there education for younger fathers?
Yeah, I think one of the key solutions that we try to focus on more so than anything is this intervention that we have created called Philanthropy, which really focuses on discussing fatherhood prior to a father becoming a father, which includes our pre-father care intervention. And we also know that fathers who have already become fathers can always take our pre-father care intervention in conjunction with another intervention we have that's called managing emotions. We also understand that men experience more emotions than anger. Anger isn't the only emotion that we're currently experiencing. And we find this to be a great resource for our older fathers as well as our younger fathers, as well as our youth. We can begin having these conversations prior to our young men becoming dads, which is a form of prevention, right? So we believe in conjunction with those two interventions and our emphasis on those interventions, we could do our small part in the world. So that's how we try to, have some damage control. But at the same time, when you're up against forces such as racism and systemic oppression, there's only so much you can do. But again, we try to do our small part to prevent it. And on the other hand, we try to support dads who have already experienced those stressors that we didn't catch earlier to actually get it right for the remainder of their lives. So those are the two things that we do at Fathers Uplift.
That's great, thank you. I've got one more question actually for the both of you. Can you talk about sustained follow-up connections? So do you partner with groups, like childcare groups, parenting groups, help with transportation, that sort of thing?
So I'm happy to answer that first. We have to. So we don't provide we don't have case managers on our staff. Unfortunately, we're not able to do that. We don't have the funding to do that. But we do partner with other community organizations that provide assistance and support in some of the areas mentioned. So absolutely, if one of our students is facing barriers, such as childcare, such as transportation, we definitely will work to overcome that, help them overcome that barrier so that that doesn't get in the way of them getting a good job and keeping that job.
Yeah, for us, our greatest sustainable resource are fathers like Greg. We found out the huge benefit in having a program of ambassadors and investing resources in fathers like Greg, who've managed to overcome barriers and also have a lot to say and give to their community to support fathers who are experiencing similar barriers as they. And one good thing about our ambassadors program is that fathers don't have to be enrolled in the Fathers Uplift program to see an ambassador like Greg, right? Maybe they don't want therapy or any other in-depth support. They still can get access to Greg, and we have a national drop-in support group for fathers, regardless of where they are in the country, that happens every Tuesday for them to meet with ambassadors like Greg on a weekly basis and have that sustainable connection. So for us, our greatest resource are dads like Greg, and we believe in consistency, right? And we also don't believe in discharges. So even for fathers who have got their needs met, we do not kick them out the program. They always can call and get another need met. But we also have our ambassadors, which is another powerful layer of support for dads that don't want in-depth services and fathers up there, but they do want to connect to another dad in the community. And our ambassadors have been a very great added asset to our agency.
That's great. That's great. Thank you. I mean, it's a great segue. I think, Jenny, I'll turn it back over to you. Just talking about ongoing support in a variety of different ways and connections. I know you're going to talk a little bit more about volunteer opportunities and folks can with the organizations. And Leslie has put some things into the chat, opportunities to support these terrific organizations. Jenny, I'll let you talk a little bit more about that.
Thanks. Thanks, Jen. So I hope you are wondering about how to support these organizations. And I wanted to speak for just a minute about ways to think about how TPC members can support all of our grantees more broadly. Charles said early in his remarks tonight that relationships get you in the door. And so I'd like everyone to think about your particular sphere of influence. Where do you work? Who do you socialize with? What places do you go and who do you hang out with? And realize that we can amplify the work of BEST and of Fathers Uplift and of every other nonprofit that is in our TPC community. We can talk them up to friends and colleagues. We can post on social media. We can stay informed and educated ourselves. If this interested you tonight, go on their websites and learn more. Last year at this, I became addicted to the Fathers Uplift podcast, which you can still get the old episodes on their website, by the way. When I did my walks, I would listen to their podcasts. They now have a great current blog. So you really can, the stories that were shared with us tonight, we can share with other people. And that's how these places get known. And then once they're known, of course, support comes in. I'll mention a few things and then we'll talk more specifically about specific volunteer opportunities. A great number of TPC members make individual monetary contributions to organizations that move them. We're surprised at how many have joined boards of organizations or have lent their services, their skills, and their expertise. So think creatively for yourself about what you can do. And of course, we do have some organized activities and volunteer opportunities. And I'm going to let Leslie Levinson, who's our new co-president, speak for a moment about that so that it's clear, something you could you could immediately do. Leslie, do you want to unmute yourself?
Sure. Hi. I mean, I just posted 2 different ways that you can support what we say, support beyond the check. And we have a team of about at least 15 TPC members who've been actively working with BEST, conducting mock interviews, and they're done virtually now. You will be trained. There's training sessions, and you can choose your own 2-hour block of time during the months of March, April, and May to conduct these interviews. We also have had a lot of TPC members help BEST graduates fill out job applications and fix up their resumes. Similarly, Fathers Uplift has a wonderful program, Bags for Dads, where a duffel bag is given to a dad upon release that is more dignified than just a plastic bag. It's filled with all the necessities to get started, some clothing and toiletries and things. And it's a way of just also letting these guys know that there's people encouraging and hoping the best for them, and they're not alone. It's that piece of community. So that's something that you can either organize a drive to get the supplies, or they always have an Amazon wish list and you can just buy a bunch of the supplies for them. Great ways to get involved. Hope you all take advantage of those opportunities.
Thanks, Leslie. Just a few wrap-up announcements, and then we welcome anyone to stay on to chat, particularly if you are a guest. We'd love to see your face and get to know you and answer any questions. We'll have a hard end at 7:15, but you're welcome to stay on and have an informal chat till then. So our next dialogue will be in April. And if you would like to step onto our ladder of involvement that I mentioned earlier in the program, along with Jen and myself, you can shadow us and get involved in planning an event. So if you're interested, just indicate it right now in the chat. Just type in, make sure your name is clear. You don't have some weird, moniker or whatever, and we will follow up with you. And finally, of course, it's always awkward to do this virtually, but please, if you can indicate and show a very warm thank you to all our speakers tonight, to Tariana and to Lori and to Charles and to Greg. They've given us their time and their energy at the end of a long work day. We thank you for that. And of course, we thank you for the work you do during your work day every day as well. So with that, welcome you to sign off or stay on, and we'll hope to see you soon.